A racist white manager denies a black couple at a wedding venue. The black couple records the interaction, which angers the white manager, who has a giant outburst. The next day, he is terrified when the video goes viral online. Jordan adjusted his blazer, glancing at Simone as she checked her reflection in the rearview mirror. They exchanged a smile, excitement bubbling between them. "This is it, babe," he said, his voice steady but brimming with anticipation. "Can you imagine our families here? The photos, the dance floor, everything?" Simone turned to him, her eyes bright. "It's perfect. Just like we imagined." She reached out and squeezed his hand. "I'm so glad we're doing this together." They stepped out of the car and stood in front of Crestwood Hall. The venue's grand facade, with its pristine white columns and sprawling lawns, was even more impressive in person. Jordan took a deep breath, soaking in the sight, then guided Simone towards the entrance, their fingers intertwined. Inside, the lobby was all polished marble and crystal chandeliers. A receptionist sat behind a sleek desk, her smile professional as they approached. "Hi, we're Jordan Carter and Simone Davis," Jordan said. "We have an appointment at 10 for a tour." The receptionist's smile faltered slightly, but she quickly recovered. "One moment, please. I'll let the manager know you're here." Simone looked around the lobby, her eyes lingering on the elegant decor. "This place is gorgeous," she murmured. "I can already picture us here, with everyone we love. It's like a dream." Jordan nodded, his excitement building. "Yeah, it's going to be amazing." All those months of planning are finally paying off. They were still chatting about seating arrangements and potential decor themes when the receptionist returned. There was a subtle tension in her posture as she spoke. "The manager will be with you shortly." They waited in the lobby, talking excitedly about their plans. Simone pulled up photos of floral arrangements on her phone, holding it up for Jordan to see. "What do you think about this for the centerpieces? It's elegant, but still has a bit of personality." "Perfect," Jordan said, leaning closer to her. "And it'll go great with the color scheme we picked." They were so absorbed in their conversation that they didn't notice the manager approaching until he was almost upon them. Richard Crane, tall and imposing in his tailored gray suit, stopped a few feet away. His expression was carefully neutral, but his eyes held a flicker of something unreadable. "Good morning. I'm Richard Crane, the manager here," he said, his tone polite but distant. "How can I assist you today?" Jordan stepped forward, extending his hand. "Hi, Mr. Crane. We're here for a tour of the venue. We have an appointment at 10. Richard hesitated for a fraction of a second before shaking Jordan's hand, his grip firm but quick, as if he couldn't wait to let go. "I see. I'm afraid there's been a mistake. We don't have you on our schedule today." Simone frowned, pulling out her phone. "That can't be right. I spoke with someone yesterday. They confirmed everything." Richard's smile didn't reach his eyes. "We've had some issues with certain types of bookings recently. We need to ensure our venue maintains its profile." Jordan's brow furrowed. "I'm sorry, what do you mean by that?" Richard's expression tightened, his smile fading. "Our clientele expects a certain standard. We have to be selective about the events we host here." Simone glanced at Jordan, confusion turning into concern. "We've been planning this for months. We followed all the procedures, made the necessary arrangements. I even have the email confirmation right here." She held up her phone, showing the message. Richard barely glanced at the screen before shaking his head. "I understand, but there must have been some miscommunication. Unfortunately, we can't accommodate you today." There was a pause, a heavy silence filled with unspoken tension. Jordan's voice was calm, but his eyes were hard. "So, let me get this straight. We confirmed our appointment, took time off work, drove all the way here, and now you're telling us we can't even see the venue." Richard shifted slightly, his posture rigid. "I'm sorry for the inconvenience, but as I said, we have to be cautious about the events we host. We have a reputation to uphold." Simone's eyes widened, disbelief spreading across her face. "A reputation? What does that have to do with us? We're just here to plan our wedding." Richard's smile tightened into a thin line. "We try to avoid complications. We want to make sure every event reflects the standards of Crestwood Hall." Jordan's jaw clenched. He took a step closer, lowering his voice. "Complications? What kind of complications are you talking about?" Richard's gaze flicked to the side, then back to Jordan. His voice was measured, each word carefully chosen. "I'm not suggesting anything specific, but we've had issues in the past where certain events didn't align with our image." Simone's voice trembled slightly as she spoke. "Are you saying we can't get married here because of how we look? Because we're black?" Richard's eyes widened for a split second before he composed himself. "I never said that, but we do have standards to uphold, and we can't risk hosting events that might cause disruptions." "Disruptions?" Jordan repeated, his voice rising slightly. "We're talking about a wedding, not a protest. We've done everything by the book, and you're treating us like we don't belong here." Richard raised his hands in a placating gesture, but his tone was condescending. Please, let's not make this into something it's not. I'm sure there are other venues more suited to your needs. Simone took a step back, her face a mix of shock and anger. More suited? What's that supposed to mean? It means, Richard said, his voice growing firmer, that we cater to a specific type of clientele. We've built our reputation over years, and we have to protect it. Jordan felt a cold anger building inside him. So, because we're not the right type of people, you're turning us away? Richard's expression was now openly hostile. I think it would be best if you found another venue. This isn't the place for you. There was a moment of stunned silence. Jordan's hand tightened around his phone, his knuckles white. Without a word, he turned on the camera and pointed it at Richard. This is what we're dealing with, he said, his voice shaking slightly as he recorded. We've been planning our wedding for months, but apparently, we don't fit the profile of Crestwood Hall. Richard's face turned pale, but his expression shifted from surprise to fury in an instant. You think you can just film me without my consent? His voice, already tight with control, cracked into a near shout. Turn that damn thing off. Not a chance, Jordan said, his voice steady. Everyone's going to know what you said. Richard's face contorted with rage. You think you can just walk in here and make demands? You people always want something for nothing. This is Crestwood Hall, not some back alley dump where you can just push your way in. Simone's eyes widened, the venom in Richard's words hitting her like a slap. We're not asking for anything we don't deserve. We have the same right to be here as anyone else. Richard took a step closer, his fists clenched at his sides. You don't belong here. You don't fit. This isn't some cheap ghetto affair where you can roll in with your whole damn neighborhood. This is a place of class and sophistication. Jordan's hand shook with anger, but he kept the camera steady. Say that again. I dare you. Richard's face was crimson, his voice trembling with fury. You heard me. I don't want your kind here dragging down everything we've built. You think just because you've got a little money, you can buy your way into places you don't belong? Simone reached for Jordan's arm, her voice shaking. Jordan, let's go. He's not worth it, but Jordan didn't move. He was staring at Richard, his mind racing. He knew he couldn't hit him, couldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing him lose control. But the words, the hate in Richard's eyes, it was almost too much to bear. You think you're better than me? Richard snarled, his voice low and venomous. You think you can come into my place with your cheap clothes and your trashy little plans and make demands? I know your type, always looking for something for free, always trying to play the victim. Well, not here. Jordan took a deep breath, forcing himself to stay calm. You're not going to get away with this, he said, his voice steady but filled with resolve. Everyone's going to see this. They're going to know exactly what kind of person you are. He turned off the recording and slid his phone back into his pocket. Without another word, he took Simone's hand and walked out of the building. They didn't stop until they reached the car, the tension between them electric, like a live wire. Simone looked back at the entrance, where Richard was still standing, his face twisted with anger and hatred. What do we do now? Jordan took a deep breath, his voice steady. We make sure everyone knows. We don't let him get away with this. As they got into the car, Richard was already striding towards the door, his eyes locked on them, his mouth moving as he barked something at the receptionist inside. The memory of his hateful words echoed in their minds, but so did their resolve. They had come looking for their dream venue, but what they found instead was a harsh reminder of the reality they still had to face, and they were ready to face it, together. Simone's hands were trembling as she tried to start the car, her mind still reeling from the confrontation inside. Jordan was staring straight ahead, his jaw clenched tight. The air in the car felt thick, charged with the anger and disbelief swirling between them. I can't believe he said those things, Simone whispered, her voice shaky. He practically screamed at us like we were criminals. Jordan took a deep breath, his fingers drumming on his knee as he struggled to control his emotions. People like him think they can say whatever they want, do whatever they want, and get away with it. Just as Simone managed to start the engine, the glass doors of Crestwood Hall swung open with a loud bang. Richard Crane stormed out, his face twisted in rage. He marched towards their car, his steps quick and aggressive, his voice echoing across the parking lot. Hey! He bellowed, his voice cracking with fury. You can't just leave like that! Jordan turned to Simone, his eyes wide with surprise. What does he want now? Simone's heart was pounding as she watched Richard approach. Jordan, let's just go. We don't need to deal with him anymore. But Jordan didn't move. He rolled down the window, meeting Richard's glare head on. What do you want? He asked, his voice cold and controlled. Richard leaned down, his face inches from the car window. You delete that video right now, he demanded, his voice shaking with barely controlled rage. You can't record me without my permission. That's illegal. Jordan's lips pressed into a thin line. Actually, it's not illegal to record someone in a public place, especially when they're saying the kind of things you were saying. Richard's eyes narrowed, his lips curling into a sneer. You think you're so smart, don't you? You people always think you're entitled to do whatever you want. Well, not here. This is my property, and I'm not going to let you ruin it with your lies. Simone's mouth dropped open, shock and anger coursing through her. Lies? Everything you said back there is on camera. You made it clear that we're not welcome here because of who we are. Richard slammed his hand down on the roof of the car, causing both of them to jump. You think you're going to ruin me? You think you can come in here, make a scene, and then what? Go cry racism and expect everyone to believe you? Jordan's hand tightened around the steering wheel, his knuckles turning white. You did this to yourself. We're just making sure people see you for what you are. Richard's face turned crimson, his voice rising to a near shout. You people are all the same, always playing the victim, always trying to take something that isn't yours. Well, not this time. You're not going to take this place down with your fake sob story. Simone felt a surge of anger, her heart pounding in her chest. We're not trying to take anything from you. We just want to be treated with the same respect as everyone else. Richard let out a harsh, mocking laugh. Respect? You don't deserve respect. You come in here, looking like that, thinking you're going to get the same treatment as my real clients? The ones who belong here? Jordan's vision blurred with rage. What do you mean, looking like that? We're dressed appropriately, we made an appointment, and we have every right to be here. Richard took a step back, his sneer deepening. You can dress up all you want, but you don't belong here and you never will. Jordan pushed open the door, stepping out of the car. His fists were clenched at his sides, his body trembling with the effort it took to keep himself in check. Say that again. Richard's eyes flicked to the open car door, then back to Jordan. He took a step forward, his posture aggressive. You heard me. You don't belong here. This isn't some trashy event where you can roll in with your whole family and think you're going to be treated like royalty. This is Crestwood Hall, and we have standards. Jordan took a step closer, his voice low and dangerous. You're a disgusting racist person, and everyone's going to know it. Richard's eyes flared with anger. He looked like he was about to say something else, but then he stopped, his face twisting with hatred. You're going to regret this. I'll make sure of it. Simone got out of the car, her voice trembling with anger and fear. Jordan, please, let's just go. He's not worth it. Jordan's eyes never left Richard's, his body still tense and ready. Yeah, let's go. We've got what we need. They both got back into the car, and as Simone started the engine, Richard stood there, his face a mask of rage and contempt. You'll never be welcome here, he shouted as they began to pull away. Simone's hands were shaking as she gripped the steering wheel, tears stinging her eyes. I can't believe this is happening. I can't believe it. Jordan reached over and placed a hand on hers, his voice steady. We're going to make sure everyone sees what kind of person he is. This isn't over. Simone nodded, her jaw set with determination. No, it's not. As they drove away, the grand facade of Crestwood Hall faded into the distance, but the sting of Richard's hateful words remained. What should have been a joyful day had turned into a nightmare, but they weren't going to let it end there. We need to post the video, Jordan said quietly, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. People need to see what happened. Simone glanced at him, her face still pale. Are you sure? This is going to blow up. People are going to have opinions, and not all of them will be good. I know, Jordan replied, his voice firm, but we can't let him get away with this. If we stay quiet, he'll keep doing this to other people. We have to fight back. Simone took a deep breath, then nodded. Then, you're right, let's post it. Jordan pulled out his phone, his hand still trembling as he opened the video. He watched it again, the sound of Richard's hateful words echoing through the car. Then with a deep breath, he hit post. The video uploaded quickly, and within minutes, the notifications started pouring in. Comments, shares, messages of support and outrage. It was spreading like wildfire, and as Jordan watched the views climb, he felt a surge of hope. This is just the beginning, he said softly, his eyes locked on the screen. We're not going to let them get away with this. Simone nodded, her hand reaching out to take his. We're in this together. As they drove away from Crestwood Hall, the video continued to spread, and with it, their message. They weren't going to be silenced. They were going to fight back, and they weren't going to stop until everyone knew the truth. Jordan sat on the couch, staring at his phone screen as notifications continued to flood in. The video had gone viral faster than he could have imagined. Within hours, it had been shared thousands of times, and the hashtag #JarWeddingWhileBlack was trending on multiple social media platforms. He looked over at Simone, who was pacing the living room, her expression a mixture of anger and disbelief. I can't believe how fast this is spreading, Simone said, glancing at her own phone. People are actually listening. Jordan nodded, his mind still trying to process everything. Yeah, but there are a lot of people out there who aren't happy about it too. Have you seen some of these comments? Simone stopped pacing and looked at him, her face tense. What are they saying? He scrolled through the screen, his jaw tightening. Some people are saying we're exaggerating, that we're trying to ruin a respectable business just because we didn't get what we wanted. Simone crossed her arms, her voice tight. Of course they are. People don't want to see the truth. It's easier to pretend this kind of thing doesn't happen. Jordan sighed, setting his phone down on the coffee table. But then there are all these other comments too. People who've gone through the same thing. They're sharing their own stories. Simone sat down beside him, looking over his shoulder as he scrolled through the comments. Same thing happened to us last year. Crestwood Hall said they were overbooked and couldn't take our reservation. We knew what it was really about. I'm so sorry you went through this. I can't believe places like this still exist. I hope you sue the hell out of them. This is disgusting. Jordan felt a surge of emotions. Anger, relief, solidarity. It wasn't just about them anymore. It was bigger than that. Simone scrolled through more comments on her phone, her brow furrowing. Look at this one. I tried to book Crestwood Hall for my daughter's wedding, and they quoted me a price way higher than what my friend paid. I thought it was a mistake, but now I'm not so sure. Jordan shook his head, feeling the weight of it all pressing down on him. It's like they've been doing this for years, and no one's called them out on it. Simone looked up at him, her eyes shining with determination. Well, they're being called out now, and we're not going to let them get away with it. By the next day, the story had been picked up by local news outlets. Journalists reached out, asking for interviews, wanting to hear their side of the story. Jordan and Simone decided to go on camera, knowing that it was their chance to make their voices heard. That evening, they sat on their couch, the bright lights of the camera crew illuminating their living room. A young reporter with a calm, empathetic demeanor sat across from them, her notepad balanced on her knee. Thank you for speaking with us today, the reporter said, her voice professional but warm. I know this must be a difficult time for both of you. Simone nodded, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. It is, but it's important. People need to know what's really going on. The reporter leaned forward slightly, her expression serious. Can you tell us what happened at Crestwood Hall? Jordan took a deep breath and recounted the story, his voice steady but filled with emotion. He described the excitement they'd felt, the hope they'd had, and then the crushing reality of Richard's words. We did everything right, he said, his voice tight with controlled anger. We followed the process. We made the reservations, and yet we were still treated like we didn't belong, like we were a problem that needed to be dealt with. Simone picked up where he left off, her voice breaking slightly. It was humiliating. All we wanted was to see the venue, to plan our wedding, but he made it clear that people like us weren't welcome. The reporter nodded, her expression sympathetic. And what do you hope to achieve by sharing your story? Jordan looked directly into the camera. We want accountability. We want Crestwood Hall to face the consequences of their actions. And we want people to know that this kind of discrimination is still happening, right here, right now. The interview aired that night, and by the next morning, their story was everywhere. The hashtag #OzShopper's Wedding While Black continued to trend, and more people shared their own experiences with discrimination in the wedding industry. But not everyone was supportive. They started receiving messages from people defending Crestwood Hall, accusing them of exaggerating or playing the race card. This is ridiculous, Simone muttered, scrolling through the comments. How can people still not see what's right in front of them? Jordan put a reassuring hand on her shoulder. People will always find a reason to deny the truth when it makes them uncomfortable. But that doesn't mean we stop. The backlash from Crestwood Hall's defenders didn't deter them. They continued to speak out, their voices growing stronger with every story that was shared. And as the days passed, the movement grew. More people came forward, and more media outlets picked up the story. By the end of the week, Crestwood Hall issued a formal statement denying the allegations. They claimed that Jordan and Simone didn't have a proper appointment and that the venue was fully booked on the day they arrived. Simone's hands shook as she read the statement aloud. We uphold the highest standards of professionalism and welcome everyone. Unfortunately, this appears to be a misunderstanding and we regret any inconvenience caused. Jordan snorted, his expression incredulous. A misunderstanding? They're trying to cover their asses. Simone nodded, her anger simmering just beneath the surface. They're making it seem like we just showed up and caused a scene. Jordan's phone buzzed with another notification. It was a message from a lawyer offering to take their case pro bono, citing a history of racial discrimination lawsuits against venues like Crestwood Hall. Looks like we're not the only ones who've been through this, Jordan said, showing Simone the message. Simone took a deep breath, then nodded. Okay, let's fight this. Not just for us, but for everyone else who's been pushed aside, ignored, and disrespected. Jordan looked at her, his eyes filled with determination. We'll make sure they can't just sweep this under the rug. The fight was just beginning, and they were ready. The couple had been knocked down, but they weren't staying there. They were standing up, not just for themselves, but for everyone who'd ever been told they didn't belong, and they were going to make sure their voices were heard. Simone sat at the kitchen table, her laptop open in front of her, the screen filled with articles and social media posts about their story. She rubbed her temples, the weight of the past few days pressing down on her. Jordan paced the living room, his frustration palpable as he spoke on the phone with Miriam, their lawyer. They're saying we didn't have an appointment, Jordan said, his voice tight with anger. We have the confirmation emails, the phone records, everything. This is outright lying. Simone glanced at her phone, scrolling through the statement released by Crestwood Hall. The polished language and formal tone did nothing to mask the dismissiveness of their response. We regret any misunderstanding, she read aloud, her voice dripping with sarcasm. We uphold the highest standards of professionalism and welcome all clients. However, in this case, the couple did not have a scheduled appointment, and the venue was fully booked at the time of their visit. Jordan slammed his hand against the back of the couch. Fully booked? The place was empty when we got there. This is them trying to save face. Simone nodded, her eyes blazing with anger. They're trying to turn it around on us, make it look like we're the ones at fault. Jordan's phone buzzed with another incoming call. He glanced at the screen, his expression hardening. It's Richard Crane, he muttered. Don't answer it, Simone said quickly, fear and anger mingling in her voice. We don't need to hear more of his lies. But Jordan shook his head, his jaw set. No, I want to hear what he has to say. He hit the answer button and put the phone on speaker. What do you want, Richard? Richard's voice crackled through the phone, the usual arrogance replaced by a thinly veiled fury. You think you're so smart, don't you? Posting that video, dragging our name through the mud. You're going to regret this. Jordan's grip on the phone tightened. We're not lying, Richard. People deserve to know the truth. The truth? Richard sneered. The truth is, you're trying to ruin a respectable business because you didn't get what you wanted. But you're not going to win this. We have lawyers. We have connections. You're nothing compared to us. Simone leaned forward, her voice trembling with anger. We're not trying to ruin anyone. We just want people to be treated fairly. Richard laughed, a cold, mirthless sound. Fairly? You want fairness? Life isn't fair, sweetheart. And you're about to find that out the hard way. Jordan's voice was cold. Is that a threat? It's a promise, Richard snarled. You think you can just post a video and everything will change? You're in over your heads. And when this is all over, no one's going to remember your little sob story. Jordan's heart pounded in his chest, but he forced himself to stay calm. We're not backing down, Richard. We're going to fight this, and we're going to win. Good luck with that, Richard snapped. You're going to need it. The line went dead, and Jordan stared at the phone, his pulse racing. He looked up at Simone, who was pale but resolute. We're not backing down, she said, her voice steady. No matter what they say, no matter what they do. We're not backing down. Jordan nodded, his resolve hardening. We've come this far. We're not stopping now. The days that followed were a whirlwind of media appearances, interviews, and meetings with Miriam to discuss their legal strategy. The public response was overwhelming. Social media exploded with support for the couple, as well as condemnation of Crestwood Hall's actions. News outlets picked up the story, and soon it was everywhere. Local news, national news, even international outlets were covering the controversy. As more people watched the video, more couples came forward with their own stories of discrimination at Crestwood Hall. We tried to book our daughter's wedding there last year, but they told us they were fully booked. Then we found out another couple got the date we wanted. They quoted us an outrageously high price, way more than what my friend paid for the same package. We suspected it was because of our race, but we didn't have proof. Miriam sat across from Jordan and Simone in her office, a stack of papers in front of her. We've received over 20 formal complaints from other couples, she said, her voice serious. That's more than enough to support a class action lawsuit. Simone's eyes widened. A class action lawsuit? Against Crestwood Hall? Miriam nodded. Yes, we can file a suit on behalf of all the couples who've experienced discrimination. It won't be easy, and it won't be quick, but it's the best way to hold them accountable. Jordan leaned forward, his voice filled with determination. Let's do it. They need to pay for what they've done, not just to us, but to everyone they've hurt. Simone nodded, her voice steady. We're in. Miriam smiled, a fierce light in her eyes. Good. I'll start preparing the paperwork. This is going to be a long fight, but I believe we can win. The news of the class action lawsuit spread quickly. Crestwood Hall's initial denial was met with widespread outrage as more people shared their own experiences of discrimination. The venue's social media pages were flooded with negative comments, and their once pristine reputation was in tatters. One evening, as Jordan and Simone watched the news, the anchor announced that Crestwood Hall had canceled all upcoming events and closed its doors indefinitely. The camera cut to a shot of the venue, the grand facade now shadowed by the dark clouds of scandal and controversy. "They're running scared," Jordan muttered. "They know they're in trouble." Simone nodded, but her expression was somber. "But what about all those couples who had their weddings booked there? They're left scrambling, and it's all because of Richard and his arrogance." Jordan sighed. "I know, but we have to stay focused. We can't let them distract us from what we're trying to do." As the days passed, the pressure on Crestwood Hall continued to mount. News outlets dug into the venue's history, uncovering more instances of discrimination and questionable business practices. Former employees came forward, describing a culture of racism and favoritism that permeated the entire organization. Simone and Jordan watched it all unfold, their emotions a mix of satisfaction and exhaustion. They had never imagined that their fight for justice would lead to such widespread scrutiny of the entire industry. Then, one day, they received an email from Crestwood Hall's legal team. The subject line read, "Settlement Proposal, Crestwood Hall." Simone's heart raced as she clicked it open. The email outlined a substantial financial settlement being offered to the couples involved in the lawsuit. In addition, Crestwood Hall promised to implement new anti-discrimination policies, mandatory training for staff, and a diversity council to oversee future bookings. "They're trying to buy their way out," Jordan muttered, his eyes scanning the email. Simone nodded slowly. "But this isn't just about money. It's about making sure this doesn't happen to anyone else." They called Miriam and discussed the proposal in detail. While the financial compensation was generous, it wasn't enough. They wanted guarantees, real changes that would prevent another couple from going through what they had endured. The next morning, their lawyer delivered their response to Crestwood Hall. They would consider the settlement only if the venue agreed to an external audit of their business practices and a public apology admitting their past discriminatory actions. It didn't take long for Crestwood Hall to respond. The venue, already hemorrhaging business and reputation, agreed to the terms. The day the apology was posted online, Simone and Jordan sat side by side on their couch, reading through the statement together. "We acknowledge and apologize for the discriminatory practices that have taken place at Crestwood Hall. We deeply regret the pain and harm these actions have caused and are committed to making meaningful changes to ensure that all couples, regardless of race or background, feel welcome and valued." Simone let out a slow breath. "It's something, at least. They're admitting what they did." Jordan nodded, though his face remained tense. "It doesn't erase what happened, but it's a start. And maybe, just maybe, it'll stop someone else from going through this." As they watched the comments roll in beneath the post, some supportive, some skeptical, and some outright hateful, Simone felt a strange mix of emotions. Relief, anger, hope, and sadness all swirled together, impossible to separate. They had won, in a way. Crestwood Hall had been exposed. The truth laid bare for everyone to see. The couples who had been hurt now had a voice, a platform from which to demand change. But it didn't erase the hurt they had felt, the humiliation, the anger. "Do you think they'll really change?" Simone asked quietly, looking at Jordan. He shrugged, his expression thoughtful. "I hope so. But if they don't, we'll make sure everyone knows." Simone nodded, feeling a sense of determination settle over her. They had come too far to let this be the end. They had fought for their rights, and they had won, but there was still so much more to do. As the weeks went on, the stories of other venues began to surface. Couples sharing experiences of subtle but unmistakable discrimination, being given different pricing, offered fewer options, treated with condescension, or outright hostility. The movement they had started was spreading, and it was clear that what had happened at Crestwood Hall was far from an isolated incident. Jordan and Simone knew their fight wasn't over, but for now, they took a moment to breathe, to reflect on what they had achieved, and to hold each other close. "We did it," Jordan said softly one evening, as they sat on their porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and orange. Simone rested her head on his shoulder. "Yeah, we did, and we're just getting started." They had turned their pain into power, their anger into action, and now, as they looked towards the future, they knew that together, they could face whatever came next. Simone was scrolling through her phone when she saw the message. At first, she thought it was just another comment from a supporter or a news outlet looking for an interview. But then she noticed the name. "Jordan, come look at this," she called, her voice tinged with disbelief. Jordan walked over, rubbing his eyes. They'd barely slept since the story broke, their days a blur of media interviews, phone calls, and an endless stream of messages. He leaned over her shoulder, reading the email aloud. "Dear Mr. Carter and Ms. Davis, I saw your story and wanted to reach out. I'm the owner of the Willow Gardens, a wedding venue not far from Crestwood Hall. I was appalled by what happened to you and would like to offer our venue free of charge for your wedding." Simone looked up at Jordan, her eyes wide. "Do you think she's serious?" Jordan sat down beside her, shaking his head in disbelief. "It seems like it. She even included her phone number and asked us to call if we're interested." Simone's heart was pounding. After everything that had happened, the idea of someone offering to help them felt almost unreal. "What do we do?" Jordan took a deep breath. "Let's call her. Worst case, she's not serious. But if she is, it could be a chance to turn something awful into something good." Simone nodded, her hand trembling slightly as she dialed the number. It rang twice before a warm, confident voice answered. "This is Evelyn Walters," the woman said. Simone cleared her throat, her nerves getting the best of her. "Hi, Ms. Walters. This is Simone Davis. My fiancé Jordan and I know who you are," Evelyn interrupted gently, her tone kind. "And please call me Evelyn. I meant every word of my message. What happened to you was wrong, and I want to help." Simone glanced at Jordan, who gave her an encouraging nod. "Thank you, Evelyn. It's just, we've been through so much these past few weeks, and your offer is more than we could have hoped for." "I can't even begin to imagine," Evelyn replied, her voice sincere. "But I want you to know that not everyone in this business is like Richard Crane. My family has run the Willow Gardens for over 30 years, and we believe that love is love, no matter what." Jordan leaned in closer, taking the phone from Simone. "Thank you, Evelyn. We're just trying to make things right, not just for us, but for anyone who's been treated like this." "I understand," Evelyn said, "and I want to help you do that. Why don't you both come by tomorrow? I'll give you a tour, and we can discuss details. You'll have our venue, our best staff, everything you need to make your day perfect. No strings attached." Simone felt tears welling up in her eyes, a mixture of relief and gratitude washing over her. "We'll be there," she managed to say, her voice thick with emotion. "Thank you so much, Evelyn. This means more to us than you know." "I'll see you both tomorrow," Evelyn said warmly. "And don't worry about a thing. We're going to make this right." When they hung up, Simone looked at Jordan, a smile breaking through the tension that had been etched on her face for days. "Can you believe this?" she asked, almost laughing with disbelief. "After everything, someone actually wants to help us." Jordan pulled her into a tight hug. "I know. It's like, for the first time, we're not fighting this alone." The next morning, they drove to the Willow Gardens, nerves and hope mingling in their chests. As they pulled up the long driveway, they were struck by the venue's beauty. The sprawling gardens were lush and vibrant, with flowers in every color imaginable. A white gazebo stood at the center, framed by weeping willows that seemed to sway gently in the breeze. Evelyn was waiting for them at the entrance, her smile warm and genuine. She was a woman in her early 50s, her hair streaked with silver, dressed in a floral print dress that matched the vibrant surroundings. "Welcome to the Willow Gardens," she said, extending her hand. "It's so nice to finally meet you both in person." Jordan shook her hand, feeling the genuine kindness in her grip. "Thank you for having us, Evelyn. This place is incredible." Evelyn's smile widened. "I'm glad you like it. Let me show you around." She led them through the gardens, pointing out different features. The archway draped with climbing roses where couples exchanged vows, the pavilion perfect for receptions, the serene pond that reflected the sky like a mirror. As they walked, she shared stories of the couples who had been married there, her voice filled with pride and love for the place she had helped build. Simone felt a lump in her throat as they reached the gazebo. "This is beautiful," she whispered. "I can already picture our families here, everyone smiling. It's more than we ever imagined." Evelyn turned to face them, her expression serious now. "I want you to know that what happened to you at Crestwood Hall was unacceptable. It made me furious to think that there are still places that treat people like that. That's why I reached out. I want you to have your dream wedding here. On us." Jordan glanced at Simone, his eyes shining with gratitude. "Evelyn, we can't thank you enough. After everything we've been through, this feels unreal." Evelyn smiled, her eyes softening. "It's not about the money. It's about standing up for what's right. I want people to see that love and respect should be at the heart of this industry, not prejudice." They spent the next hour discussing details, dates, guest lists, decor. Evelyn made notes, her enthusiasm infectious. Every time Simone suggested something, Evelyn nodded, her mind already racing ahead to how she could make it happen. By the time they left, Simone's heart felt lighter than it had in weeks. She glanced at Jordan as they walked to their car, her smile radiant. "This is really happening, isn't it?" she said, almost afraid to believe it. Jordan nodded, his own smile breaking through the tension that had been his constant companion. "Yeah, it is. And it's going to be perfect." The news of Evelyn's gesture spread quickly. Social media lit up with posts praising her for stepping up and offering her support. News outlets picked up the story, framing it as a tale of resilience and solidarity in the face of adversity. "Finally, someone doing the right thing," one commenter wrote. "Evelyn Walters is a hero. Crestwood Hall could learn a thing or two from her." "I know where I'm booking my wedding," another person posted. "The Willow Gardens, here we come." Simone and Jordan were overwhelmed by the outpouring of support. Messages flooded in from people they'd never met, sharing their own stories of discrimination, thanking them for speaking out, or simply offering words of encouragement. "We're not alone in this," Simone said one evening as they sat on the couch, scrolling through the messages. "There are so many people out there who've gone through the same thing." Jordan nodded, his heart swelling with a mix of anger and hope. And now they're seeing that they don't have to take it, that there are people who will stand with them. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they knew they could face them together. The filing of the class action lawsuit against Crestwood Hall was met with a wave of both excitement and anxiety. For Simone and Jordan, it felt like a culmination of all the pain and struggle they had endured over the past months. They weren't just fighting for themselves anymore. They were fighting for every couple who had been wronged, dismissed, or humiliated by the venue's discriminatory practices. The media response was swift and intense. News outlets ran headlines like "Discrimination Exposed," "Crestwood Hall faces class action lawsuit," and "Couples Unite Against Wedding Venues' Racist Policies." Jordan and Simone found themselves at the center of a media storm, their faces plastered across news channels and social media platforms. Simone sat at the dining table, her laptop open to a news article detailing the lawsuit. She scrolled through the comments section, her heart aching as she read the stories from other couples who had been mistreated by Crestwood Hall. "We were told our reservation was lost, and they couldn't accommodate us," she read aloud. "Later, we found out another couple, white, had taken our spot. We were devastated, but we didn't think we could do anything about it." Jordan leaned against the kitchen counter, his arms crossed. "How many more people do you think there are who haven't come forward?" Simone shook her head. "Probably a lot. People are scared to speak up, especially when they think no one will believe them." Jordan's phone buzzed on the counter, and he glanced at the screen. "It's Miriam," he said, referring to their lawyer. "She wants to talk." He picked up the phone and put it on speaker. "Hey, Miriam. What's going on?" "Hi, Jordan. Hi, Simone." Miriam's voice crackled through the speaker. "I wanted to update you both on the lawsuit. We've officially filed, and Crestwood Hall has been served. They have a few weeks to respond, but I expect they'll try to settle before this goes to court." Simone's heart raced. "Settle? Do you think they'll really do that?" "I think they're going to try," Miriam replied. "Their reputation is already in shambles. They don't want this dragging on in the public eye, especially with so many couples speaking out." Jordan's voice was steady but firm. "We're not just going to take a payout. We want real change. And that's exactly what we're pushing for," Miriam assured them. "We're asking for financial compensation for all the couples involved. But more importantly, we want Crestwood Hall to implement mandatory anti-discrimination training, conduct regular audits of their practices, and establish a diversity council that reports directly to their board." Simone exchanged a look with Jordan, her eyes reflecting both hope and determination. "If we can get that, it'll be worth it. Not just for us, but for everyone. That's the goal," Miriam said. "We're fighting for systemic change, not just a check, and we're going to make sure Crestwood Hall knows we're serious." After they hung up, Simone felt a mix of emotions swirling inside her: hope, anxiety, determination. "Do you think we're really going to make a difference?" she asked quietly, looking at Jordan. He wrapped his arms around her, holding her close. "We already have. Look at all the people who've come forward, the conversations this has started. We're changing things, one step at a time." The weeks that followed were a blur of meetings, interviews, and legal strategy sessions. More couples joined the lawsuit, their stories adding to the growing list of grievances against Crestwood Hall. Each new account painted a picture of a business that had long operated with impunity, its discriminatory practices hidden behind a veneer of exclusivity and professionalism. Simone and Jordan spent countless hours with Miriam, going over every detail of their case. They wanted to be prepared for anything Crestwood Hall's lawyers might throw at them. They knew the venue would fight hard to protect its reputation, and they weren't taking any chances. One afternoon, Miriam called them into her office for an urgent meeting. They sat across from her, the air thick with anticipation. "I just got off the phone with Crestwood Hall's legal team," Miriam said, her tone serious. "They're offering a settlement, Simone's heart skipped a beat. Already? What are they offering? Miriam slid a document across the table. They're offering a substantial financial settlement for all the couples involved, plus a public apology. They're also agreeing to implement the anti-discrimination policies we requested, including the Diversity Council. Jordan glanced at the document, then back at Miriam. What's the catch? Miriam's expression was calm but firm. They want the lawsuit dropped and the settlement kept confidential. No one outside of the involved parties can know the details. Simone felt a surge of anger. They're trying to buy their way out of this. They don't want people to know what they did. Jordan nodded, his jaw clenched. We're not agreeing to that. We want people to know. They shouldn't be able to just sweep this under the rug. Miriam nodded. I thought you might say that. I've already told them we won't agree to a confidentiality clause. If they want to settle, they need to be transparent about what they've done and what they're going to do to fix it. Simone took a deep breath, feeling the weight of their decision. And if they don't agree, then we go to court, Miriam said simply. And we make sure the world hears your story. Jordan reached over and took Simone's hand. We're not backing down. We'll fight this all the way. Miriam smiled, a glimmer of pride in her eyes. I knew you would. I'll let them know our terms. As the days passed, Simone and Jordan waited anxiously for Crestwood Hall's response. The media coverage continued, with more couples coming forward and more stories of discrimination surfacing. It wasn't just Crestwood Hall. Other venues were being called out as well, their practices scrutinized under the harsh light of public attention. One evening, as they sat on the couch, Simone's phone buzzed with a notification. She glanced at the screen, her heart leaping into her throat. Jordan, look at this, she said, holding up her phone. It was an article from a local news site, the headline reading, Crestwood Hall agrees to settlement, acknowledges past discrimination, pledges reforms. Jordan's eyes widened as he read the article. They agreed? Simone nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. They agreed. They're going to implement all the changes we asked for, and they're going to issue a public apology. Jordan pulled her into a tight embrace, his heart pounding with relief and triumph. We did it, Simone. We actually did it. The next day, Crestwood Hall issued a formal apology, acknowledging the discriminatory practices that had taken place and pledging to do better. They promised to implement the anti-discrimination training and audits, establish a diversity council, and work to ensure that all couples, regardless of race or background, felt welcome at their venue. Simone and Jordan watched the apology being broadcast on the news, their hands intertwined. It wasn't a perfect resolution. Nothing could erase the pain and humiliation they had endured, but it was a step in the right direction. And it was proof that their voices had been heard. I'm so proud of us, Simone said softly, her eyes shining with emotion. We stood up for ourselves, and for everyone else who's been through this. Jordan nodded, his gaze still fixed on the screen. And we're not done yet. We've started something here, and we're going to keep going until every venue, every business, knows that they can't get away with this. Simone leaned her head against his shoulder, a sense of peace and determination settling over her. We're going to keep fighting. For us, for everyone. As they sat together, watching the apology and the coverage of their victory, they knew they had achieved something incredible. They had taken on a powerful institution and won. And now, they were ready to take on whatever came next, together. They had turned their pain into power, their anger into action, and now they were ready to face the future with hope and resolve. They had made a difference, not just for themselves, but for everyone who had ever been told they didn't belong. And that was something worth celebrating. The air was filled with the scent of fresh flowers and the hum of excited conversations. Simone and Jordan stood in the middle of the bustling reception hall at the Willow Gardens, surrounded by vendors setting up tables, arranging decorations, and testing the sound system. It was the final planning session before their wedding, and everything was falling into place. Can you believe this is actually happening? Simone asked, her voice tinged with awe as she watched a florist adjust a stunning centerpiece of roses and lilies. After everything, we're really here. Jordan squeezed her hand, his eyes filled with warmth. I know, it feels surreal, but we made it, Simone. We fought through all of that, and now we're here. They strolled through the hall, admiring the way Evelyn and her team had transformed the space into something out of a dream. The tables were draped in elegant linens, each adorned with a delicate arrangement of flowers that matched their color scheme perfectly. Soft, twinkling lights hung from the ceiling, casting a gentle glow over everything. Simone paused beside the head table, running her fingers over the smooth surface. I almost can't believe it's the same day we had in mind when we started planning. I thought we'd never get to this point. Jordan turned to her, his expression serious. I did too sometimes. There were so many moments when I wanted to give up, when I thought maybe it wasn't worth it, but seeing this now, it's all worth it. Simone nodded, her eyes misty. And it's not just about the wedding anymore. It's about everything we've been through, everything we've fought for. We didn't let them break us, Jordan smiled, pulling her close. No, we didn't. And now we get to celebrate with everyone we love. As they walked outside, Evelyn approached them. Her face lit up with a smile. Everything's coming together beautifully, she said, her voice brimming with excitement. I can't wait for you to see the finished setup tomorrow. Simone hugged her tightly. Evelyn, thank you so much. You've made all of this possible. Evelyn shook her head. No, you two did that. I just gave you a place. You turned it into something beautiful. She glanced around, her eyes sparkling. And tomorrow, you'll show everyone what love and strength look like. Simone felt a swell of emotion, a mixture of gratitude and pride. It's going to be amazing. Jordan looked out at the garden, where the chairs were already set up in neat rows facing the altar. Have you seen the guest list? I think we might have a few more people than we planned for. Simone laughed, the sound light and carefree. I know, everyone wants to be here to celebrate with us. It's like they all want to be part of something good. After all the negativity, Jordan nodded thoughtfully. We've been through so much, but we've had so much support too. It's overwhelming, in the best way. Evelyn placed a hand on Jordan's arm, her smile soft. People are inspired by you two. You stood up for yourselves, and for others. That kind of courage is rare. It's why everyone's here, celebrating not just your love, but what you represent. Simone and Jordan exchanged a glance, both of them feeling the weight of her words. It's been a crazy journey, Jordan said quietly. We just wanted to have a wedding, but it turned into something so much bigger. Simone nodded. And we're glad it did. We're glad we could make a difference. They spent the next few hours going over the final details, making sure the seating arrangements were correct, checking the menu, and confirming the timing with the officiant. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the gardens, they sat down on a bench near the pond, watching the last rays of light dance across the water. Simone sighed, leaning her head on Jordan's shoulder. It's perfect, isn't it? Everything's exactly how we wanted it. Jordan kissed the top of her head, his heart full. It really is. And tomorrow it's going to be even better. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sky shift from gold to pink to deep purple. The quiet, the beauty of the gardens, the knowledge that after everything they had been through, they were finally going to get the wedding they had dreamed of. It was all almost too much to take in. We've come so far, Simone said softly, breaking the silence. Sometimes I think about where we started, and I can't believe we made it here. Jordan nodded, his eyes distant. I think about that day at Crestwood Hall a lot. How everything changed in an instant. We could have just walked away, you know. We could have let it go, but we didn't, Simone said firmly. And I'm glad we didn't. Jordan turned to look at her, his eyes full of love and admiration. You're the strongest person I know, Simone. I'm so proud of you. Simone's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. I'm proud of us. We did this together. They sat there, side by side, watching the stars come out, feeling the calm before the storm of the big day. It was a moment of peace, a moment to reflect on everything they had been through, and to look forward to the future they were building together. We're going to have an amazing life, Simone whispered, her voice filled with quiet confidence. Jordan nodded, his smile soft. Yeah, we are, and it starts tomorrow. The next morning dawned clear and bright, the sky a perfect blue. Simone stood in the bridal suite, her heart pounding with excitement and nerves as she looked at herself in the mirror. Her wedding dress was everything she had ever imagined. Soft, flowing fabric that hugged her figure in all the right places. Delicate lace that trailed down her arms. Her bridesmaids bustled around her, fixing her veil, adjusting the train of her dress, their chatter a comforting background noise. Tara, her maid of honor, stood back and looked at her with a proud smile. You look incredible, Simone, she said, her voice full of emotion. Jordan's going to lose his mind when he sees you. Simone laughed, her cheeks flushing with happiness. I can't believe this is happening. It feels like a dream. Tara hugged her gently, careful not to muss her dress. It's not a dream. You earned this. After everything you've been through. You deserve all of it. There was a knock on the door, and Evelyn poked her head in, her eyes shining with excitement. Simone, it's time. Simone took a deep breath, her heart racing with anticipation. She glanced around at her friends, her family, all the people who had stood by her and Jordan throughout this journey. Let's do this. As they made their way out to the garden, Simone's heart swelled at the sight before her. The chairs were filled with their loved ones, everyone smiling, everyone excited to share in their joy. The flowers, the decorations, everything was perfect. And then she saw Jordan, standing at the altar, looking more handsome than she had ever seen him. His eyes were locked on her, his expression a mixture of awe and love that took her breath away. The music started, and Simone began her walk down the aisle, her heart bursting with happiness. Each step felt like a step toward a new beginning, a new life filled with love and hope and endless possibilities. When she reached the altar, Jordan took her hand, his smile radiant. "You look amazing," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Simone felt tears prick her eyes. "You're not so bad yourself." The ceremony was everything they had dreamed of. The vows they spoke were filled with love and gratitude, a testament to the journey they had been on and the strength of the bond they had forged. As they exchanged rings and kissed for the first time as husband and wife, the crowd erupted into cheers and applause. Simone looked out at the sea of smiling faces, feeling a surge of emotion. They had made it. After everything, they were here, surrounded by love and support, ready to start the next chapter of their lives together. As they walked back down the aisle, hand in hand, Jordan leaned in close. "We did it," he whispered, his voice filled with awe and happiness. Simone squeezed his hand, her heart soaring. "We really did, and this is just the beginning." They had turned their pain into power, their struggle into strength. And now, as they celebrated their love and the life they were building together, they knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. Their journey was far from over, but for now they were content to simply be together, surrounded by love, their hearts full and their spirits high. And that more than anything was worth celebrating. 2 weeks had passed since their wedding, but Simone and Jordan still felt like they were floating in a dream. The ceremony, the celebration, the outpouring of love and support. It had been everything they could have hoped for, and more. Now they were settling into the rhythm of married life, enjoying the peace and quiet after the whirlwind of the past few months. They sat together on the couch in their cozy living room, the soft light of the afternoon sun filtering through the curtains. Simone was curled up against Jordan, her head resting on his shoulder as they watched a documentary on Netflix. It was one of those rare moments of stillness, where everything felt calm and right. Jordan reached for the remote, pausing the show as his phone buzzed on the coffee table. He picked it up and frowned at the screen. "It's a notification from the local news app," he said, swiping to open the alert. "Something about Crestwood Hall." Simone shifted slightly. Her interest peaked. "What does it say?" Jordan's eyes widened as he read the headline aloud. "Crestwood Hall manager Richard Crane dismissed amid controversy. Sources say move was to save face." He looked at Simone, disbelief mingling with satisfaction. "They fired him." Simone sat up, her heart racing. "They actually fired him? Let me see." Jordan handed her the phone and she quickly scanned the article. It detailed Richard Crane's sudden departure from Crestwood Hall, citing irreconcilable differences and ongoing legal issues. The piece mentioned the lawsuit, the public backlash, and the financial losses the venue had suffered since the scandal broke. "It says he was let go quietly last week," Simone said, her voice filled with a mix of relief and vindication. "They didn't make an official announcement, but insiders confirmed it." Jordan let out a long breath, leaning back against the couch. "Wow, I didn't think they'd actually do it. Not after everything they tried to deny and cover up." Simone nodded, her eyes still glued to the screen. They must have finally realized that keeping him around was more trouble than it was worth. After everything that came out, they probably didn't have a choice. They sat in silence for a moment, processing the news. It felt like the final piece of a puzzle clicking into place, a sense of closure that they hadn't even realized they needed. I don't know, relieved," Simone said finally, setting the phone down. "Like we've actually made a difference. He's not going to be able to do this to anyone else." Jordan reached out, taking her hand in his. "You're right. We did that. We stood up. We fought back. And now he's gone. It doesn't erase what he did, but it's something." Simone nodded, a small smile tugging at her lips. "It's more than I thought we'd get. When this all started, I didn't think we'd get this far. I just wanted people to know the truth. But we did it, Jordan. We really did." Jordan squeezed her hand, his eyes shining with pride. "And it wasn't just us. It was everyone who stood up and shared their stories. Everyone who supported us, who believed us. We couldn't have done it alone." Simone's smile widened as she thought about all the people who had rallied around them. Friends, family, strangers who had reached out with their own stories of discrimination and support. "We didn't just stand up for ourselves. We stood up for all those people who were too afraid or didn't think they could." Jordan nodded, his voice thoughtful. "And now maybe more people will speak up. Maybe more places like Crestwood Hall will think twice before they treat people like that." Simone felt a warmth spread through her chest, a sense of hope and possibility that had been missing for so long. "I hope so. I really do." They spent the rest of the afternoon talking about everything that had happened, reflecting on the journey that had brought them to this point. They laughed about the absurdity of some of the things they had been through, cried a little as they remembered the hardest moments and celebrated the victories they had won together. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the room in a soft golden light, they sat in comfortable silence, holding hands and savoring the quiet peace that had settled around them. "Do you ever think about what's next?" Simone asked softly, her eyes fixed on the fading light outside. "Now that all of this is over, what do we do?" Jordan smiled, his gaze gentle. "I think we take it one day at a time. We keep living our lives, loving each other, and standing up for what's right whenever we can. And we don't forget where we came from, what we've been through." Simone nodded, her heart swelling with love and gratitude. "I like that. One day at a time, together." They leaned into each other, their hearts beating in sync, feeling the strength and peace that came from knowing they had faced the worst and come out stronger on the other side. A few days later, they received a surprise in the mail, a letter from one of the couples who had joined the class action lawsuit against Crestwood Hall. Simone's eyes widened as she read the words, her heart swelling with emotion. "Dear Jordan and Simone, we just wanted to thank you for everything you've done. Because of you, we found the courage to stand up and speak out. We felt like we had a voice for the first time, and it's all thanks to your bravery and strength. We recently found a new venue that welcomed us with open arms. We're getting married there in a few months, and we couldn't be happier. None of this would have been possible without you two leading the way. You've changed our lives, and we're forever grateful. Wishing you both all the happiness in the world. With love and gratitude, Lisa and Derek." Simone looked up at Jordan, her eyes glistening with tears. "They found a place. They're getting married." Jordan's smile was soft, his heart full. "That's incredible. We really did make a difference." Simone nodded, folding the letter carefully and setting it on the coffee table. "It's moments like this that make everything worth it." They sat together, holding hands, feeling the quiet joy that came from knowing they had helped others find their own happiness, their own peace. As the days turned into weeks, they continued to hear from other couples, stories of hope, of new beginnings, of weddings that were finally happening in places where they were truly welcome. It was a reminder that their fight had not been in vain, that their voices had been heard. And through it all, Jordan and Simone grew even closer, their bond strengthened by everything they had faced together. They knew that life would have its ups and downs, but they were ready for whatever came next, confident in their love and their ability to overcome anything. One evening, as they sat on the porch, watching the sun set in a blaze of color, Jordan turned to Simone, his expression thoughtful. "We've been through so much," he said quietly, "but we've also built something beautiful out of it." Simone nodded, her heart full. "We have. And we'll keep building, one day at a time." They leaned into each other, their hearts beating in sync, feeling the peace and joy that came from knowing they had faced the worst and come out stronger. Together, they were unstoppable. And as the stars began to twinkle overhead, they knew that no matter what the future held, they would face it together, hand in hand, hearts full of love and hope. They had turned their pain into power, their struggle into strength, and now they were ready to embrace whatever came next, together.